Hi, I'm Valerie from Very Vegan Val, and today we're gonna do meal kits. The video you're about to watch was shot in 2023. I did a lot of work for the filming of the video, but then I got very overwhelmed at the idea of editing it, so I just let it rot on my SD card for 2 years now. When I went back and looked at the footage, I still really liked the idea of the video, so I went ahead and edited it, and I'm publishing it here today. Now, if you follow my channel, you may notice that some things have changed. I got a new stove, I got a new dishwasher, and I started thinking a lot more about camera angles and background noise. So sorry about some of the shots you're about to see. So I know a lot of people do meal kits for a lot of different reasons, to try new recipes, because they're quick, because they're easy, because it takes out the mental load of having to think of what am I going to make for dinner this week. But I'm a recipe developer. I love thinking of what to make for dinner this week. So I've never really tried one in the past, but I did go on a Facebook group and I found a link to a free box from HelloFresh. I just paid shipping, which was I think about $11. And so I thought, seems like a great time to try a meal kit. I was a little bit disappointed to find that HelloFresh only had 2 vegan options. And frustratingly, they had a lot of options that were so close to being vegan, but they had Parmesan cheese or they had mayonnaise. And yes, you could just leave that out, but as a vegan, I really don't want to be acquiring these items to begin with. So that was a bit of a bummer because I could get up to 5 free meals in my box and there were only 2 options. Really quick, I want to say if you are looking for a meal kit that is vegan, try Purple Carrot. It's 100% vegan. All of their options will be vegan. Fantastic. In my research, I also found that Green Chef is another good option. They're not vegan, but they do have more vegan options. So because I could get up to 5 free options, I did the obvious thing. I got duplicates. The meals we are looking at this week are vegan Kickin Cajun cauliflower stew and this sweet Hoisin ramen stir fry. And even though I only have 2 different vegan meals, I am not going to be eating the same meal more than once. What I'm gonna do today is I'm going to take these meal kits, I'm gonna make one just as directed in the recipe card, and with the other one, I'm gonna see how much I can transform it and change it to feel like I'm eating an entirely different meal, even though I'm gonna be using the exact same ingredients. All right, let's get started. So for the vegan Kickin Cajun cauliflower stew, this is what we have in our bag. We've got cauliflower, some diced tomatoes, fresh parsley, a green bell pepper, a little stalks of celery, a literal tablespoon of white flour, which I'm gonna say, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like most people would have already had this at home. A little thing of basmati rice, Cajun spice. I believe this is a veggie broth concentrate, an onion, and what looks like another veggie broth concentrate. Alrighty, so first thing I'm gonna do is just whip this up exactly as they tell me to. All right, so I have my first one started, and then I'm gonna start on my reimagined one. I'm gonna be kind of making this up as I go along. I do have a few ideas that I'm gonna follow, but I haven't exactly figured out where all the pieces are coming into play yet. I'm gonna start with this cauliflower, and I'm just going to microwave it in the bag to essentially steam it. So let's give that a shot. And I'm going to come here and I've got this skillet heating up. I'm going to actually toast my rice. And my goal here is to just get some nice brown, lovely flavors in this rice, which I'm actually gonna turn into a flour in a minute here. So I'm just adding a layer of complexity in the flavor. I'm calling it, it smells wonderfully toasty. I'm gonna transfer this to a blender and then I'm gonna blend it up until I have a flour. I also have our cauliflower here. I steamed that in the microwave for about 2 minutes, and then I pureed it with a little bit of water to make it blend nice and easy. Because I don't really have anything better to do with it, I'm going to add this tablespoon of flour into the rice flour we made. And then let's add our cauliflower puree to a mixing bowl. We're gonna add a generous pinch of salt to that. And then we're gonna add our toasted rice flour to the mixture, a little bit at a time. Okay, I am definitely a little bit short on flour. So I'm going to cheat and supplement with just some regular flour from my kitchen. I think this might have been able to be avoided if I'd managed to puree my cauliflower with less water, but I think I might need a better blender for that. All right, and there we have our dough. Check that out. It is still a little sticky and it's very soft. So we're gonna try making gnocchi. Because our gnocchi batter is a little bit different than a typical gnocchi batter, it doesn't have very much gluten in it and it doesn't have any eggs. And I feel like the cauliflower is a little bit less sticky than a potato. I'm gonna try a different method. I'm gonna put our batter into a piping bag, pipe them into individual gnocchi, and then freeze them to help them set. And here they are! So cute. Okay, I'm gonna stick them in the freezer and I'm gonna do another tray. While my gnocchi freeze, I'm gonna build a simple little tomato sauce. All right, so I've got some oil heating in this little pan and we're gonna add our diced onions. While we're here, let's add a little bit of salt and some pepper. And we're just gonna cook these down a little bit until they become soft and translucent. The onions are coming along. I'm gonna add the rest of this seasoning packet. Because we have them, we're also gonna add these 2 veggie broth concentrates. And then we're gonna also add our thing of tomato. Alrighty, I'm giving it a good mix, and then we're just gonna bring it to a simmer and let it cook down so the flavors all meld together. For the bell pepper and celery, I realized I could just put it in my sauce, but that kind of just felt like I was chucking vegetables in because I had to put them somewhere. So I decided to do something a little bit different instead. I have finely chopped up the bell pepper, the celery, and a little bit of the parsley, about half of it. And I'm gonna make sort of like a crunchy topping or salad situation to go with our meal. I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil, some salt, a bit of this Cajun spice mixture, and then do not tell I'm cheating. I'm gonna add some white vinegar to this because it desperately needs some acid. Primo. And we're just gonna set this aside and the flavors will continue to marinate and deepen. We've got our large skillet heating with some olive oil, and we've got our frozen little cauliflower gnocchi, and I'm just going to pop them right in. This is meal 1. It is the original Kickin Cajun stir fry with rice. This is meal 2. It is the cauliflower gnocchi with sauce and green pepper slaw. Here's the first one. This is the meal that was made by HelloFresh, and I followed directions. It could use a little salt in the stew. That's a me problem. I'm gonna go fix that. The cauliflower is good. I do really like roasting it and then adding it in because you get some more of that char. The rice is pretty good too. It has a good amount of flavor to it. The stew itself, I find kind of unimpressive. I think it could be benefited from some garlic. It's not bad, it's just not great. It's not very spicy. When I hear Cajun, I think it's gonna be a little bit more spicy than that. Again, garlic. It's certainly not bad, it's just not that interesting. It did make a lot more stew than I thought it was gonna make, which is good because I eat a lot of food. Next. Okay, firstly, I had a lot of fun making this. The sauce itself is like a little bit simple. Again, I would love to see some garlic in here, just some more flavor. The gnocchi are amazing. I've never made gnocchi this way before, with cauliflower and then like freezing them and piping them, but they're very tender with a crispy outside, really good. I would make these again. I think that the toasted rice does actually add a little bit of flavor to them as well. I will say this green slaw stuff on top, while it's good, it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense with the rest of the dish. I do like raw vegetables, I do like acidity, I do like crunch. I'm not mad that it's there, but it doesn't really quite seem to belong on this plate in the same way. Mostly though, I am super happy to have 2 different meals to eat out of the exact same ingredients. Overall, in terms of HelloFresh, I would say I was impressed with the amount of food that this made. I thought it was gonna be a lot less looking at the ingredients, but I think this is going to be a totally filling meal. I think if I were to do this myself more often, I would probably augment it more with stuff from my kitchen, garlic, spices. But overall, if you want something quick to do on a weeknight, not too bad. On to the next meal. This one is the sweet vegan Hoisin ramen stir fry. And firstly, I will say, when I purchased it from the meal plan, it said it was a vegan firecracker noodle stir fry, which honestly sounds better to me. But let's dig in. We've got noodles, 2 scallions, and another 2 scallions, wrapped in plastic. A little thing of edamame, red bell pepper, some cabbage with a little bit of carrot mixed in, and then the sauces. This is sriracha. We've got some sweet soy glaze, brown sugar, hoisin, and some pho broth concentrate. So what struck me right away upon looking at these ingredients, specifically the sauces, I don't actually know what's in the pho broth concentrate, so let's exclude that, but hoisin is a very sweet sauce. Sriracha is a sweetened hot sauce. Brown sugar is sugar. And then this soy sauce is a sweet soy glaze. I don't usually keep track of nutrition, but I went on and I looked, and per serving, there is 32 grams of sugar, 64 total, which is about the equivalent amount of sugar as 2 12-ounce cans of Coke. I'm not trying to sugar shame anyone. I really am concerned that it is actually not going to taste good because of the amount of sugar in it. But we shall see. Let's get started. All right, I finished up the HelloFresh version. Now on to my version. I was a little bit stuck here because what do you do with the noodles besides, you know, make noodles? So, well, I'm gonna try something, and this is experimental. I am definitely not confident that this is going to work, but what I'm gonna try doing is cutting these noodles up into small pieces and trying to make almost like a risotto out of them. I'm especially not confident because when I made my other dish, I found these noodles cooked quite quickly, and risotto is generally a more slow cooking dish, but we were going to try. If you are triggered by the breaking of pasta, I recommend just skipping a while ahead. Ooh, pretty. All right, I'm now gonna grab one package of my scallions. And then I'm basically gonna try and make a sort of broth. I also went through and picked out a bunch of these carrots from the cabbage mixture, and we're just gonna throw that into our stock as well. And we're gonna start with our pho broth concentrate, which I did taste, and it is not particularly sweet, so that is lovely. I'm gonna start with 3 cups of water. We're gonna add some salt. And I'm gonna add a little bit of this sweet soy glaze. While we bring our broth to a simmer, I thought I would make a kind of slaw featuring our purple cabbage. And to it, I'm going to add the green parts of the other 2 scallions. We're also gonna take half this red bell pepper and cut it into very fine half moons and add that to the bowl as well. And now I'm gonna try and whip up a dressing using the ingredients that we have. I'm gonna take what's left of my bell pepper, I have about a quarter bell pepper, break it into chunks and stick it in my handy dandy little blender here. I'm also gonna take the green parts of the scallions and chop them into smaller pieces and add them there as well. I'm gonna utilize our sriracha in the dressing. Add the tiniest squirt of our sweet soy glaze, and then top that off with some water. It's delightful. All right, and now it's time for the main event. We've got a large skillet heating. I'm gonna add some oil. Over here, we've got our broth, nice and warm, ready to go. And to this warm skillet, I'm gonna add our broken up pasta. Start by adding a ladle full of our warm broth. At this point, because we are almost all of the way cooked, I'm gonna throw the edamame in and then cook until all of the water has been absorbed or evaporated. Crack of fresh pepper here. I've checked, it is plenty salty. I don't really need to add any more salt now. And add our scallion tops. Stir it up and she's done. That is 2 meals done, and I gotta say I am more or less out of creativity, but I do have 1 more meal kit left. I think I'm gonna do what to me is the obvious thing and make it into a noodle soup. All right, I'm probably not gonna show you the whole process because I'm not doing anything mind-blowing here, but this is basically what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the base of the scallions to start to build up the broth. So I'll saute that. I'm going to add probably about half of the pepper at the same time to do sort of the same thing like we did with the broth for the risotto. I'm gonna cook the noodles independently The cabbage I'm going to add just at the end. It's gonna go on top for a little bit of crunch. Brown sugar, no. Glaze, just a little bit. Sriracha, yes. Fall box concentrate, yes. The, I don't even know where it went, but I'm not going to be using the hoisin again. And these puppies will go in sort of towards the end of the broth cooking. Let's go! And here we have our 3 dishes. Our original HelloFresh, our risotto style noodles with a cabbage slaw, and our noodle soup. I did cheat and use some baking soda in the noodles when I cooked them because it helps give them a better bite when you then submerge them in broth later. All right, time for the trial. Let's start with the HelloFresh. The things I like about it are the vegetables are all very well cooked. They had us add the cabbage later, and it has a nice crunch to it. I would say that the spice level is good. It's not super spicy, but it does have a spice to it, and I imagine if you're selling to a large market full of different tastes, this is a good place to land at. Although, you could give more and let people choose their own spice level, but if you're not gonna do that, I would say this is a good level of spice. What I don't like is how sweet it is. Like, literally, I feel like I've said that a bazillion times, but it's sweet. It's sugary. I don't know. Not my favorite. Next. All right, this is the first one that I made with the strange risotto style noodles. I will say, this like noodle technique is really interesting. The noodles are definitely soft and kind of overcooked feeling, but it doesn't really bother me. It has like some creaminess to it. It's amazing how much more flavor it has just by leaving out some of those sugary additions. The crunch on top is really nice. Overall, I really like this. I think it would be even better if I had managed to cut the noodles even smaller. Now this almost pho style noodle soup is sort of what I thought was the obvious direction to go when I saw the ingredients. All the vegetables are well cooked. I think that the cabbage has just the right amount of crunch. I'm glad that I chose to microwave it a little bit. Now for the broth. It's very delicate. It might be a little bit too delicate. I maybe should have used a little less water, but after having the other 2 dishes, I think it's actually a really nice contrast, so I'm appreciating that. So let's wrap things up together. What are my takeaways from my first venture into meal kit land? The first thing I was really struck with was how much trash this process produced. Now, HelloFresh is the only meal kit I've tried, so I don't know if this is typical or if they use more or less than other companies, but every ingredient I got except for the bell peppers and onions was wrapped or packaged in some sort of plastic. That didn't really feel good. I'll get a shot up of all the trash that produced. This right here is the result of my 5 meals. This doesn't even include any of the things that it was shipped in. And so at the end of it, I am left with all of this. Plus it had to be shipped to me. Again, not really ideal. So I didn't really feel good about the process because of that. Honestly, I wasn't really impressed with the meals that these kits made. They were not my favorite. They weren't terrible. And I think if I had augmented them with stuff that I have that I like, garlic, other spices, soy sauce, in the case of the noodles, just maybe replace the entire soy glaze with just soy sauce and garlic, that might have been much better. So I think that really the recipes could actually be a good bit better, personally. That's just me. In terms of vegan options, it would be nice to see more of them, especially the vegetarian ones that were very close to being vegan. It would be nice if those little tweaks could be made to just give more variety to not only vegans, but people with milk or egg allergies. That would be awesome, I think. Something else that kind of bothered me is on both of the 2 recipes I got, there was an option to add either chicken or shrimp as a protein to the dish, sort of implying almost like that this dish wouldn't be entirely complete without adding that protein. I kind of felt like, what a missed opportunity. Why couldn't you have suggested adding a seitan or a tofu? And you can upcharge in that same way, but you can give good vegan options. You could even do that on other dishes. You could offer to switch the meat in a dish for a vegetarian substitute, and that would give more variety and choices to people. Now for the upsides. For what I paid for this box, this was a super good deal. I think if you just counted the bell peppers alone, that made up half of what I paid for it. I will say, I think after that, it gets a good bit more expensive, and so it might not really be a good deal anymore. But for what I paid, it was a great deal. Another great upside is if you are the type of person that doesn't have the mental energy for meal planning, excellent. This is a great option because it just chooses it for you. It does your shopping for you. That is fantastic. I can also see how if you are an individual who only cooks at home a few times a week, this is much more economical than going out and buying all the ingredients you might need for other dishes. Overall, I am probably not going to be doing a lot of meal kits in the future. They don't really work well for my lifestyle, and the amount of waste they produce is a little bit of a bummer for me. But I would love to know what you think. How did you feel about the recipes that I made? Do you like meals kits? Are they something that you use? How do you do that as a vegan? And are other meal kits better in terms of the amount of waste they produce? I would love to know. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!